Hi everyone, Michael from Bullion Now, bullionnow.com.au. So we have several challenges here today. In fact, we have a lot of challenges here today. So Ruben and Alex are tied up in the store, which is going to be interesting. I'm operating from in a hotel in Linz in Austria. Now, I'm just going to try and get a better position because from my screen it's incredibly grainy and that light behind me is going to drive us nuts. So excuse me for a second while I spin this around and see if I can get a better view of no glariness. There we go. That looks a little bit better, doesn't it? Alrighty. So I've got a few people joining us in the chat. And like I said, you're going to have to excuse me. It is 4:40 in the morning in Austria. I'm awake. Have to admit, I've still been running a lot of Australian time because the shop's been open. So I've been available for calls and all sorts of things as they've gone through the day, and they are absolutely under the pump in the store. So when I got a message when I logged on a little while ago from Ruben saying, look, I'm really sorry, but we're not going to get there. We're just so under the pump. I can't say I was shocked, but it's a little disappointing because this is at this stage, this is the last live stream for the year. So obviously next week we're in the run into Christmas. In fact, if I remember rightly, next week will be Boxing Day, I think. And so the team will be taking a well-deserved break. There'll be a few of us still kicking around and still working and all those fun things that some of us do over the Christmas break, but most of us will be taking some well-earned leave and a deep breath. So you're stuck with me for the final live stream of the year, which, like I said, is disappointing, and I apologise. So we're going to have to sit back, relax. I'm going to be drinking a Shartner bomb. I'm not even sure I really know what one of these is, except for it tastes like lemonade a little bit with a funny kick to it. For the session to keep me going. And we'll run this a little bit like we do with a lot of these sorts of sessions when I'm by myself. It's more like one of the things we used to run many years ago called a Michael's Mailbox, where effectively it gave you the chance just to ask any questions you wanted that are bullion related. We occasionally stray into things like aviation. We try and steer away from politics as much as we can. We haven't made this a political channel for the vast majority of it. Every so often I get a full head of steam and I make a dopey comment, but as a general rule, we stay away from that sort of stuff. But looks like Alex is in the shop, but he's stopped by to say good day, which is great. But yeah, it's a chance for you to ask a bullion dealer pretty much anything you want along the bullion lines, and I'll answer them as best I can. Quite often you kind of sit back and you wonder if this, is this a dopey question? Should I really be asking this? Or, I'm not sure how to say it, what to say, if I should say it. And obviously the anonymity of the internet allows you to do that, and you've got clear access. And look, I think as most people would know, we don't tend to steer away from the spicy questions or the harder questions at all. Occasionally we sidestep for commercial confidentialities, or if it involves, a person or company that's not related to Bullion Now. So obviously we'll step away from those sorts of things. But basically, anything's fair game if you want to ask it, and we'll answer, or I'll answer as many possible questions as I can as I run through it, or as we all run through it. We'll try to keep it a little Christmassy. I don't know if you can hear in the background, there's some Christmas music playing. I'm actually in the, probably the dining area, actually, of the hotel I'm staying at in Linz. And they've been very gracious in making it available. You may hear some clunking in the background as they're getting ready for the breakfast rush. But at this stage, we've got it to ourselves, so should be good. All righty. So I'll go back to the top and g'day to everyone who said g'day on there. We've even got Ted Lewis from Montana in the US. I'm actually on your side of the hemisphere at the moment, but I am in Europe, in Austria. And it's been good fun. Lots of people from around Australia. And as I understand, Corey's making comment there, it's 42 degrees in the Sutherland Shire. It's days like that I'm glad I'm actually in Europe. I do not do heat well. And I know we've spent the last week, I think the top temperature for the last week for me has been about 4 degrees. So we moved yesterday, but we were staying in a beautiful place called Meerhoven in Austria, and they have a snow season from October through till about May. So it's an incredible place, incredible scenery, like just very Sound of Music scenery. It's incredible. And Meerhoven itself is fantastic because it's not one of the larger tourist resorts. You're not inundated with everyone from around the world packing in there. It's really only the locals go there. It's amazing. There's the gondola rides and the lifts go all over the mountain ranges. There's every time you think you've done every run, you turn in the corner or you slide down a new run and you find yourself in a completely different area with different runs and different lifts and gondolas and and you can spend all day doing that. And then the evening there's Christmas markets and just an amazing place. So if you ever get a chance and you want to go somewhere that's tucked out of the way, that's not you're not surrounded by tourists, you're surrounded by locals, Meerhoven is the place to go. And we stayed at a hotel. And this isn't sponsored by anyone. This is just our experience. We stayed in a hotel called Strauss, which was literally at the bottom of the gondola. So you walked out the front door about 20 metres up the road and then straight into the area where you bought your ticket and caught the gondola up the mountain, and it was just amazing. I'll try and get some footage to Ruben for next year and show you some of it. But yeah, highly recommended if you're just passing through the region, or if you ever want to do some summer snowboarding for a southern hemisphere person. So it is crazy. Cricket and Bullion Now on at the same time. Can't beat that. I'm glad, Dan. The right priority by staff. Yeah, look, it's always a hard call. We do cop some heat when we run these live streams and it's busy. People are saying, oh, you shouldn't be wasting your time on live streams and videos. You should be serving customers. And then we get the flip side of, why aren't you're doing the live stream? Why are you just focusing on the customers in the store? We need to know what's going on as well. So there's always this balance. And, today I can't serve in the store. I'm a little far away. So the least I can do is a live stream and hang out with you guys, which I think is fantastic fun and one of the favourite things, one of the highlights of the week. Silver breaks $100, Australian that is. That was nice, and gold keeps going up and up. We're certainly in a purple patch for precious metals. Some will be saying, the bubble's got to pop any moment now. Others, and myself are amongst them, would argue that this is more a recognition of the fact that the prices haven't moved for quite a long period of time, and they're catching up to where maybe they're closer to where they should be. And there's also the recognition of the fact that it's a safe haven. Precious metals are definitely a safe haven, away from. Nothing is ever directly counter-cyclical, but it certainly has counter-cyclical tendencies. When the rest of the world goes to hell in a handbasket, quite often people or the world runs to bullion, so it drives the price up. So it does have that counter-cyclical ability, and it's certainly showing that tendency now, although we are seeing the stock market also at all-time highs. So very, very interesting times, but it's good to see that that price of the metal going up. My screen has just skipped, so I apologise if I missed your question. Don't be frightened of re-asking questions. I will get down to them, and we'll move through them semi-rapidly. Any news on the Coke 10 ounce? I haven't heard directly. I know Adam was chasing them. As soon as the 15th went by, I saw Adam was on the emails contacting PAMP saying, what's the go with these? You said they would start trickling through at the middle of December. As far as I'm aware, we haven't heard back at this point, but as I've said several times, the earliest we expect them is the 15th of December, but realistically, they could push through into early next year. So it looks like that's the way we're going to go. Coins versus bars. Look, this is the perennial question. Everyone has an opinion on this one. I come from the dark side. I was a coin collector before I was a stacker. I've always favoured coins. I love the character behind them. I love the story behind them. I love some of the designs that just, blow your socks off. Amazing. Some of them are a bit ordinary, but they certainly have a place in everyone's stack. But they, as a general rule, they do cost more. Yes, occasionally, things like the Perth Mint Kangaroo that can certainly be cheaper than you can get hold of bars at different times. And you can also pick up buybacks and things like that, which are cheaper or special sometimes when we run them. But as a rule, coins are dearer than bars. And if you're just on a straight, I just want best bang for the buck, then, you really can't beat bars from that perspective. But if you want some character in your stack, if you want some interest in your stack, if you want to have that talking point with other people, as beautiful as a stack of silver or a stack of silver bars or silver gold bars in the corner is, the coins tell a story, and it allows you to express different things through it. So, it's that takes precedent, and then you also have that ability where some coins, irrespective of what happens with spot price, will develop a market of their own, and they will take off either upwards or downwards. It does certainly happen downwards sometimes, and all you get is something that follows spot price upwards and downwards. But other times you will actually lock in on a coin that rapidly or does increase in price at a greater rate and more certainty than maybe spot price movement. So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's got to be the best for everyone. I certainly am a big fan of people buying a component of their stack that they don't care about. There's nothing worse than having to sell the favoured coin. It's like parting with a child. So, I'm not saying only buy coins or only buy bars. I think that, why not have both, as Trump is fond of saying? Why not have both? And I think that's the classic example of it. What is the cheapest way to get 24 of the 1 kilo bars shipped to me by BN? The cheapest way is to come in and pick it up. But certainly we can ship them via our courier to you. It will be in a couple of parcels because of shipping limits. But it will cost a bit of money. It depends on, once you go over 5 kilos, we have to do a quote on where we're sending it to, because the couriers, while they'll say, we'll send it anywhere in Australia for X amount in a 5 kilo bag. Once you go over that, they'll go, oh no, now it's a weight per distance type measurement, particularly if you're outside a capital city, particularly if you're in Western Queensland or pretty much anywhere in the Northern Territory, and certainly parts of WA, the price can really start getting away from you because, there's not too many couriers going out there frequently. So, but you can always give us a contact, James, 1300 84 84 10, or send us through an email, sales@bullionnow.com.au, and give us your basic details, and we can give you a shipping quote fairly quickly. Just on shipping, please be aware that our shipping department has closed down for Christmas and won't reopen again until the 6th of January. So, other than a couple of emergency parcels that we've obviously committed to prior to our close. So our last shipping day was the 12th. But there is a couple of emails and things that we're tidying up, or invoices that we're tidying up, that we made a promise that we'd ship them out. And then, for whatever reason, we haven't met that yet. So they are still going out as we speak. But pretty much it's stopped until next year. Thought it was a greenhouse. Yes, it has that greenhouse feel. Yes, Stephen, very busy in the shop. So Am I home for Christmas? I am. We get back on the 23rd, which is a little disappointing. We were going to do a white Christmas in Austria, but two of my boys have things that they have to be at in Australia very, very soon after Christmas. So rather than travelling over Christmas Day, we thought we'd get back that fraction earlier and spend Christmas at home. And hopefully, and the forecast is certainly saying it's going to be a little cooler than what it is now, because I do not do heat well. What's your murky, quirky crystal ball thoughts in projections, buy and sell warnings, opportunities next 3, 6, 12 months? Look, I'm cautious over the next 3 months, and the reason being not so much the prices run up, it's that the volumes drop off over the next few months. A lot of the Northern Hemisphere traders, which are the larger traders in the world, they take breaks over that Christmas period. Not as long as they do through that summer, the northern summer, but certainly there's time away over that Christmas period and into mid-January. So because those volumes fall quite a bit, it means that even a medium-sized order and sometimes even small orders can have quite a large impact on the pricing in the market, both upwards and downwards. And it artificially inflates or deflates the market. And you'll see once the traders start returning kind of that second week of January, things start to stabilise again. And very quickly, the prices return to some form of equilibrium again. You don't tend to get during that Christmas period, you can get that massive whipsawing. It doesn't always happen, but certainly some years we see it, prices will jump quite a bit, then they'll overreact down the other way, and then, they'll just whipsaw up and down. But kind of from that mid-January onwards, as the traders start to return, it tends to level back out again, and then as the end of January rolls through, we tend to see that the trends start to continue from the previous year. January around the world, but particularly in Australia, is buyback month, so we see a lot of artificial pressure on buybacks. In fact, we're already seeing that in the store now. And I made comment of this a week or two ago. We're seeing the buybacks massively increase in the store as people, cash out for in preparation for Christmas and for holidays and things like that. And then as you go through January, people start to get their holiday bill. They start to get their Christmas Visa card. Everyone realises how much they've overspent. There's a bit of self-reflection as well. Maybe my stack's a bit big. Maybe I should take a bit of profit. And then the school fees start coming in, and buying school uniforms and getting the shoes for the kids for the year and books and all that sort of stuff. So we tend to see this artificial selling pressure through late December through into January. And then again, as February rolls through, things start to stabilise. So the next 3 months are always a bit hairy. 6 to 12 months, look, I'm fairly positive on both gold and silver, and particularly platinum, as we're starting to look towards breaking through $3,000 an ounce Australian for platinum as well. I think that's got a long way. Personally, this is not financial advice. I still think the platinum story's got a lot more to play out. The demand for it is growing and growing, and the supply, even if Russia comes back online, which, it may do, it may not do, the supply of platinum is so patchy and sporadic, even taking the political side out of it at the moment, that it's always going to be difficult to get hold of in the quantities and in the demand that the world is requiring over the next 5 to 10 years as we transition to these low carbon environments and the newer technologies coming out. And this is before we talk about the use of it in unstable environments, and I'm talking political unstable environments. It's only, I would argue, it's only good news for holders of platinum, and very similar actually to silver, I suppose. And then as we move further forward, I can't see the stabilities or the instability easing at all next year, despite chest thumping about possibly Russia and Ukraine coming to some form of agreement. There is so much going on in the world, and I don't want to touch on the tragedy of Sydney at all, but it is certainly an indicator of the instability around the world in a very personal sense. And yes, even Bullion Now was touched by it. So, as every Australian was around the country, in various forms, we're all impacted by it and will be. The echoes of that will last for many years. So, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at the picture, I see instability in the pricing over the next few months, but I see a grind upwards for the next 12 months. And I don't think, I think any short-term political stability or perceived stability will be exactly that. It will be short-term. I don't think it's going to have long-term impact on the price. I haven't been to Holstart. Now's the time of year for... Yes, I do fit the description, unfortunately. In a wool shed, I remember the days I spent many a year in wool sheds. I was never a good shearer. But I certainly knew how to be a rouseabout, and I could class wool and actually did training in that. So spent many a happy summer holidays, particularly in wool sheds. So I do feel for you in those 42 degrees in the tin wool sheds of regional Victoria and anywhere around Australia. Can I take my bullion to another country? You absolutely can. You do have to be careful which country you're going to. I'm not across every country's restrictions around the world. I know taking it into India is always a little bit entertaining. Anything over about $500 US in value, which, let's face it, isn't much these days. And it can be very difficult. Is it Vietnam? One of the Southeast Asian countries has banned it recently. Vietnam or Thailand, I think it is, the importation of gold. So you need to be careful where you're taking it. But yeah, look, as a general rule, you can take it. And I certainly did. I'm not a fan of foreign exchange at the best of times. I feel you get ripped off. So I usually take a little bit of gold with me wherever I'm going overseas. And that way I can trade it in, sell it at a local bullion dealer, and they are everywhere when you start looking for them. People go, I don't know where there are any. They are everywhere around the world. And you roll into the bullion dealer where you are, hand over the gold, and they will hand you the equivalent in local currency, and it's very close to, subject to spot price movement, it'll be very close to what you paid in your home country where you sourced it from. If you are intending on doing that, I would lean more into the world-renowned brands, particularly those that are LBMA registered, and steer away from the unknown or the more local brands. It is very much the one time when people come into the shop and they suggest they're doing that, I steer them very heavily towards Perth Mints, Pamps, Valcambis, those type of things that are recognised around the world. You take in a local XYZ company branded bar, and while you will probably be able to trade it in, and I certainly have been able to wherever I've taken them, you do get some pushback. And it may be, my experience was in Berlin one year where I did it, and it was 24 hours before I could get the funds, because they had to send it somewhere to get tested and those types of things. I still got the funds, don't get me wrong, but it was far easier with the Perth Mint, where they took one look at it, said, "Yep, no worries, here's your euros, and see you later," sort of thing. So it's far better to lean towards those known brands than the unknown brands. It's hard to serve when you're not in the shop. That's exactly right. How is the language? Look, I've got to say, not everyone's flash with the English, and I can tell you my Austrian and German leaves a lot to be desired. I've not really trained much in that since I was at high school, but between their broken English and my struggling German/Austrian, we get by really well. And I'd say, even if you didn't speak a word of German or Austrian, you would still get by in 99% of circumstances. It's incredibly rare that people don't speak some basic form of English over here, and usually you can get away with pointing at things or, doing the actions. It works fairly well. Our bus driver from the other day, English wasn't great, but we had a grand old time with him. So, it's not as hard as people make out, we'll put it that way. All right, it's just skipped ahead on me. Platinum price closing in on all-time high. Certainly in Australian dollars, we're nudging very close to 3,000, which isn't an all-time high. If you go back in history, 10 years ago or so, it was certainly at a higher price, but it's very good. Is rhodium a good investment? This is an interesting question. Rhodium, I actually have huge faith in the rhodium story. It's another one that I would like to invest in. Don't jump the gun here. And again, this isn't financial advice. Rhodium is one that I tend to steer people away from, as Alex can vouch for. Before Alex was an employee, one of the first times I met him, he came into the store to buy rhodium. And out of the hour he was in the store, 55 minutes of that at least, I tried to talk him out of buying rhodium. So we sell it, and I was trying to talk him out of buying it. And the last 5 minutes was completing the transaction because he still bought the rhodium. But rhodium, you've got to be very careful of. It's very niche. Finding someone that deals in rhodium is difficult. We are one of the few dealers in Australia that deals in rhodium. There aren't many. And even we're doing it less and less, partly because it's so hard to get hold of now. The main source of investment grade rhodium was Beds in London. And they've stopped for several years now. They've stopped producing any rhodium products. So it's getting more difficult to get hold of. So that's one of the reasons we don't deal with it. The other reason is it's very difficult to get your money back out of. And if you look on our website, I'd have to go and look it up because I haven't looked at it recently, but I think we only offer, it's either 50% or 80% of spot as a buyback, because that's all we get from the refineries when we have to sell it back to them. So, you've got to seriously believe in the rhodium story, because effectively it has to double in price plus whatever premium you're going to pay, plus the GST in Australia, before you're actually even going to break even. So while I think it's got a great story, and I think it is going to go up in price, I would suggest that it's not an easy one to invest in a physical sense anyway. Oh, Michael, fellow stackers who have already provided ID was asked to provide Medicare card information last week on the phone. Is that a requirement now? So, look, it is. So, excuse me while I take a drink. I'm running dry. So, as the world gets more and more world-like, I don't know what you want to call it, the requirements on all of us are becoming more and more. We're seeing that every day. New laws are passed, and I said I wasn't going to get political, but our freedoms are getting trodden on more and more. We're finding that we're being restricted from certain things, or we're required to meet certain standards, higher standards. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. I'm not making comment on whether this is or this isn't, but the passing of regulation and the tightening of laws and the reinterpretation of laws by governing bodies is increasing. And effectively now, if you're purchasing any amount of precious metals, particularly if you start moving into the tens of thousands, you're going to find that the requirements on bullion dealers to prove A, who you are, and then B, your source of funds is going to increase. So effectively now we've been backed into the corner where we need 100 points of ID. That's what it comes back to. The questions are being asked and the pressure is being applied to, if you go to a bank, you've got to provide 100 points of ID. You need to give us a very good reason why you don't need to do that. And the reason's becoming less and less. So we're finding more and more we're having to seek that extra layer of information. And look, at the end of the day, I know this is very easy to say and it's a bit trite. I'll admit that from the start. But to a large degree, if you're not doing anything on the suspicious side, you don't need to worry. Look, I'm the first one to admit I don't like anyone looking over my shoulder. Not that I'm doing anything wrong, but it's my business, and it's why should anyone else know about it? But the flip side of that is also the fact that none of us want to support, funding of terrorism. None of us want to support organised crime or anything along those sort of things. So there are certain things that we need to do. I would suggest that your fellow stacker has purchased a larger amount, and somebody's gone, look, you've kind of hit that threshold where we need to get that extra layer of ID just to make sure. So we've gone, instead of just the driver's license or the passport, we've said, hey, can we have a Medicare card? You're also going to find that you get to another level, and we're going to start saying, look, we need evidence of source of funds. You can't keep rolling in without us asking. And look, I have to say, when I ask that question, we try and do it as delicately as we possibly can, and it's certainly completely confidential. But, the vast majority of cases, people have got very legitimate reasons as to why they've got, $100,000 or whatever it is. It can be, I've just inherited. I've sold a house, I've sold a car, I've done this, I've done that, I've stacked it up for many years. I've withdrawn it, my superannuation, I've withdrawn it out of the bank as I can because I want to put it into a precious metal. These are all very legitimate reasons. It's the people that go, look, I'll give you a hypothetical situation that may have occurred relatively recently, where we had, somebody roll in from overseas, and not that makes anything suspicious, but, they had a large quantity of cash on them, walked into the store, they were on holiday with potentially, and this is a theoretical situation, I'm not saying this actually happened, but they may have come in with, like, I'm talking a large amount of cash, and, wanted to buy precious metal, and basically didn't have a good reason for having, or may not have had a good reason for having, a larger quantity of cash on them, except for the fact that they were on holiday. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't carry hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash on me when I go on holiday. It's not the normal thing to do. So obviously that required a heck of a lot more questioning. And in that scenario, if that actually did occur, then the chances are we're likely to say, look, I'm really sorry, but we really can't do this transaction and satisfy the requirements of our government's bodies. So, rightly or wrongly, and it's one of those things. And I'd love to say, look, we can do. We're going through a time of change at the moment on many levels. You're going to find us introducing a system early next year called Bron ID, which takes the identification requirements away from us entirely into another body, and that way we're not required to take anybody's information. It's not kept on file or anything along those sort of lines. You're not actually required to hand it over. You can prove your ID through typing in your driver's license number, your date of birth, those types of things. It can scan the government databases and come back with a yes, this person is a legitimate person, and it gives us a code that we can then just lodge that code. And that way, if Austrac or the federal police or anyone knock on our door and say, how do you know Bill Smith is Bill Smith? We can say, well, we've had it verified by the various government agencies, and this is the code that proves it. And you can take that code away, run it through the system, and you can see what verification was done through what government databases. And that way, everything's above board sort of thing. Because at the end of the day, we want to be above board so we can continue servicing, the requirements of the Australian stacker. We're also going through change. This is the first time I've talked about it publicly, but our compliance officer, Con, has decided to step down, and we're bringing in a new compliance officer. So that will bring a whole raft of changes through our requirements as we review and rebuild the framework of our ID requirements. So lots of things going on there. You're going to see things change over time. They naturally do that. There is a new stack of government laws kicking in. They start in March next year, I think it is, and then kick in June, July, in seriousness. And we've seen it on the news. Lawyers are starting to come under it now, and jewellers and secondhand car dealers and accountants and things like that. So the net is going wider and tightening. All right, long answer to a short question. Yeah, that's right, a new twist. This is where in the world is the BN shirt? Is it possible to lock in price taking a snapshot? I've been in Austria too long, drinking too much schnapps. A snapshot of the buyback live price on the website if selling unallocated during the Christmas break. No is the short answer on that, because a lot of us want to take a break over that Christmas period. We can't be monitoring the prices there, so it's because we can't get back to you quick enough. We're not going to be able to activate it and then hedge accordingly as we move through. So the short answer is, on that Christmas break, we can't do it that way, but you can certainly send in an email. Some of us will be going through the emails over the break and hitting them where we can. Please don't expect an answer during the break, but if we can get to it, we will. And I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for those sellbacks. So if I can do something along those sort of lines, I will, but I can't guarantee it. You can certainly send through the snapshot, and if I get to it fast enough, I get to it within a short period of time, I'll absolutely honour it. But yeah, as a rule, don't bank on that one. Also, you need to be aware with the unallocated, because this is a specific unallocated question. With the unallocated, we don't go off the buyback price on unallocated. We don't go on that, sell my bullion, I think it's called, tab, which gives the bid price on metal. We actually go by the unallocated price. So we're actually giving you the ask price, which is the higher price when you sell back from unallocated, because we only feel it's fair, because we are going to deduct that $30 a kilo for silver, or $30 an ounce for gold, from the price. So it's a bit unfair to take the bid price, which is the lower one of the two, and then deduct the 30 off. We kind of feel it's fairer to actually come from that ask price and then deduct the 30 off from there. So please don't send through the snapshot of the sell my bullion if you're selling unallocated for cash, or you're wanting to cash it out. You can take a snapshot of the relevant unallocated page, and that will mean you'll get that little bit higher for it. Stack silver, gold, and honey. I totally agree with that one. Platinum coins coming up. We do have some platinum coins coming up in the new year. Did you just call out to me? Possibly. World's gone to hell in a handbasket. Yes. How are things there in Austria? It's beautiful over here. It's interesting. I always love traveling to other countries to see how they're faring economically, how they're faring politically, how the locals are faring. And it's why I really enjoyed being in Meerhoven, because, as I said, it's very much a locals area. It's not so much a touristy area. And look, to be honest, it was far more positive than I expected, which was really good to see. I know my wife has just caught up with us over here, and she's come over from the UK. She was over there visiting relatives, and the limited conversations I've had with her about it, and certainly with others that I've talked to about this in the UK, are certainly giving negative feedback from over there. So going to be interested to see if I can get there early on next year for myself and see what the response is over there. But definitely the UK seems to be going downhill rapidly. Europe, I think it's pocket by pocket from my limited exposure at the moment. And the US, yeah, look, I've got to say the US I wasn't overly stoked with when I was over there earlier this year in Oklahoma. It was cracking at the seams, I think, was the way I put it at the time. So, yeah, interesting times. But Austria seems as good as ever at the moment. Is it true? New 10-ounce silver kookaburra far from being released? I don't believe so. I think it's fairly soon. And Scott Steiner, you can absolutely take your your precious metals with you to another country. Is it true that UK, Ireland, all gold coins apart from Royal Mint incur capital gains tax? Barry, I'm going to steer right away from this one, because they have some really, to an outsider, to a foreigner, what seem to be some really strange laws over there in regards to tax on their precious metals. Some coins don't incur any tax at all. The ones produced by the Royal Mint, I think, are the ones, but you've got to get local information on this, not from me. But certainly some of the Royal Mint ones don't. Until they get over something ridiculous like 225 years old or something like that, and then all of a sudden they incur tax, and it's very confusing for a foreigner. So you're going to have to talk to someone that's more au fait with the British tax laws on those things. So Did you see or hear of fake 10-ounce Engelhardt silver bars? Look, there's always fakes kicking around of anything. They're absolutely kicking around. I've seen some of the I'm treading on really thin ice here. There are some fakes kicking around of pretty much, I don't think there's a brand that I haven't seen faked. Even some of the more unusual local stuff, they're either fakes or they're badly made and not as pure as they should be. And it's why, and I know I'm pushing my own barrow here, but I would do this whether I owned a bullion store or not. It's one of the reasons why I strongly encourage people to only deal with reputable bullion dealers or coin dealers when they're doing these sorts of things. Be incredibly careful about doing peer-to-peer transactions, both from a security perspective, but also from a fakes perspective. I'm not saying you can't do it, but make sure somebody's got a reputation. And as we've said since we opened the doors at Bullion Now, if you're going to do a private transaction, we make our facilities available for that. We don't charge for it. It certainly costs us money. We don't make a profit out of it. But you are more than welcome to do the transaction in our store. That way you're around other people. You're under security cameras. You can take advantage of our security that we have on board at all times. There's quite a lot of security in the store. You can also avail yourself. Obviously, one of us has to operate it because we're licensed to, but you can avail yourself to our services with the XRF and test any product that comes through. Absolutely, you're going to be at the end of the queue because we're a business at the end of the day. We've got to serve paying customers first for obvious reasons. But absolutely, if you're willing to wait until we've got chance, we'll grab hold of whatever you need tested, and we'll quite happily test it for you and let you know if it's the real thing or not. So be very careful about going through those private transactions. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do your due diligence and be very, very careful. Please, please, please do not buy things off the likes of Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree, any of those types of things where there is no comeback on anyone. The number of transactions or the number of people that I see, big smile on their face as they come through the door because they've just bought themselves a gold bar, an ounce of gold in its correct packaging from one of these sites. They've paid $100 below spot and they're waltzing in to sell it straight back to us and claim that extra money. And haven't they done a brilliant deal? And honestly, 99 times out of 100, as they're walking through the door, one of us will lean over to the other and go, oh, here we go. And you can tell by not only the person's swagger, but you can also tell at a distance by the bar because we handle them every single day. So we know what they're meant to look like. We know their thickness and diameters and all that sort of stuff. And they front up to the counter and your heart is sinking because you know you're about to have a very difficult conversation. But you do your duty and you grab the XRF and you test it and you hope like crazy and pray that you're not going to see, a very point something or other % gold, which is the spray paint of gold on the outside, and then 90+% copper on the inside, which it invariably is. So please, please, please do not buy off those sites, as tempting as it is, as tempting as the prices become, as gullible as the people seem on there. People show me adverts sometimes, I've just inherited this from my, uncle cleaning out his house and I don't know what it's worth, but if someone can give me, X amount, which is well and truly below spot, then, I'd just be happy to take it to get it off my hands. You're being taken for a ride. So please deal with real stores, real reputable stores. All right, I'm going to skip a few, but drag me back if I've missed anything important. 100-ounce coins, they're very rare. You do see the 10-kilo coin from a few different places, though, and 5-kilo coins. Where are we here? Does your little coin shop buy numismatic coins, Michael? We don't tend to. It's not totally true, but we don't, as a rule, buy them back because little coin shop is very much, at this stage, it may change in the very near future, but at this stage, it's very much an online situation. It's very difficult for it to buy back because not only is the value in the coin itself, but it's also in the packaging around the coin. So even though the coin can be immaculate, the fact that the packaging, the box that it comes in, has got a crinkle in the corner, or you got the slightest blemish or anything along those sort of lines, it can turn an item from tens of thousands of dollars down to $100. And it's very hard to make those judgments over, from photos and things like that. So as a rule, Little Coin Shop doesn't do buybacks as a general rule. It's in the shop yesterday, only a 20-minute wait. I'm still embarrassed, Richard, that you had to wait 20 minutes. I like it when we're just churning straight through. But we are down on staff a little bit. Me being overseas on an enforced family holiday hasn't helped that. The guys are grinding through as rapidly as they can and doing a sterling job, I have to say. But there are some wait times out there. I'm glad you got through fairly quickly, which is great to see. When I did a sizable order, the freight quote was paid. Then the packaging team found multiple cheaper options. And gave us store credit. No, that's fair. For a second there, Peter, I was thought you were going to say that we've done you over. I was going to say, they meant to check that. They obviously did, and gave you the store credit, which is fantastic. And look, 90% of the time we pick up on it. Every so often we get caught out and we don't. And obviously we apologise at that point and rectify where we can. But I'm glad it worked out. Oh, my page just skipped, so I'm sorry if I missed your question. Just ask it again. Silver Sushi, you reminded me, Michael, when you take your bullion overseas instead of cash, do you expect to sell your bullion for spot price, or how much of a haircut would they offer you? I understand not everyone. You stop there. Okay, so not financial advice. I find usually I get spot or somewhere very close. I can only remember one time getting below spot, and it was only just below spot. Usually you get spot-ish, particularly in the overseas markets. Australia, very few bullion now offer spot, but very few dealers. And in fact, I don't actually know of any other dealers around Australia, but I assume there's one or two others that will pay spot, but basically no one pays spot except Bullion Now. And even we have asterisks next to that. Overseas, there's far more competition, so you find it's far closer to spot or spot. I know through the main centres of Europe, into the States, those sort of things with gold, I get spot. Silver, sometimes you get a bit less, but to be honest, although with silver increasing in price, this is less of an argument. But I've always found I've had to carry kilos of silver to actually, we've just got the lights turned on, kilos of silver rather than just an ounce or so of gold to get similar amounts. So I've always kind of favoured gold on those sort of things. I have found, particularly in Germany and the States to a smaller degree, but particularly in Germany, if I take Perth Mint coins, I quite frequently get higher than spot. They'll quite often pay a premium above spot for that. Michael, do you get spot when you sell to a refinery? Absolutely not. It's a frustration. All of those very legitimate reasons are so easily made up on the spot, so it's pointless. No, Aussie Rob, it's not pointless asking them, because usually you can pick up a sense of if the person is telling you the truth. Look, I'm not going to get it right 100% of the time. No one ever is. But you can certainly get a feel for people fairly quickly when they come through the store. And now the government is also pushing us to get people to sign, and you'll have seen it in banks and places like that, but you will start to need to sign, and I've seen bullion dealers doing it as well, sign documentation that says, this is my source of funds. The government is pushing us to say, well, you need to get your customers to prove through payslips and things like that. I don't think that's right, and we haven't gone down that road yet, but it is absolutely coming where those types of things are absolutely going to be occurring. I will guarantee it that that's the future that we are looking at. Please fix the filter in your website, read price per ounce. I'll have to have a look at that. I'm not sure what we're referencing there. I had ANZ decline a liquor land $155 purchase. They instantly texted me with, is this suspicious? I had this the other day with my Amex in Austria. I was tapping the Amex quite happily. We'd actually told Amex we were in Germany and Austria for this period. Tapped it, got declined. Used the Visa. That went through. Actually, the first Visa got declined as well. Fortunately, I carry a backup. The second Visa worked. And then about 2 minutes later, I got a text from Amex saying, is this transaction legit? I texted back and they said, Okay, now you can complete the transaction. It's like, well, that was too late. Can't hold the queue up for minutes at a time while you get yourselves organised. And I've certainly been phoned by banks and credit card companies to confirm that we're not money laundering at different times. It's the world we're living in. It's tightening up more and more every day. Hi, do we need to send in our ID every time we sell? No. Once we've got your ID and we've okayed who you are, that should be the last time we require ID, unless we need an update on it. And every so often, driver's licenses go out of date. Your volume increases, so you might hit another threshold where we've got to say, as we spoke about earlier, really sorry, you need a second form of ID just to take you to that 100 points. Those types of conversations may be had, but as a rule, once you've proven your ID, that's usually enough. We are getting some more germanium mint copper bars in. In fact, we have about half or 3/4 of a ton of them coming in. But I think it's the other side of Christmas now. They got caught up in the hecticness of the last few months and couldn't get them out quick enough. So expect to see them again early in the new year. Austria is a beautiful place, mate. I can't get enough of this place. I'd seriously think about emigrating here if I could speak the language better. Just wondering, what with the price of spot so high, are you not making as much money for $100 as you can buy one silver coin? Okay, so people often, it's not what you've actually asked, Jesse, but a similar question that we get asked is, will you still pay spot when spot price goes up? If it hits, in silver's case, $100 or $500 or $1,000 or any of those types of things. And the answer is absolutely yes. We still buy it back. We still pay spot. And I can't see that change. You never say never, but I can't see that changing, because as the price increases, the demand increases. We're selling more now than we've ever sold before when spot was at $30 an ounce, because the demand is there. That's partly what's driving the price, is that increase in demand. Do we make as much? Look, if you said $100 sale, we would have made more out of 2 years ago than we make now, because we would have been selling 3 or 4 coins in that $100. But we're still selling those 3 or 4 coins. The transactions aren't $100 anymore. The transactions are $300 or $400. So we're still overall making the same amount. But it's, the goalpost has just moved, if you like, or the standard has just moved, where when people come in to buy 3 ounces, they expect it to cost $300, not $100. And that's just the way it is. Gold's a little different, because gold works on percentages. So that's caused a lot of chaos in the industry, where, when you're paying a premium of 3 or 4% on a $2,000 item, and now you're paying 3 or 4% on a $6,000 or $7,000 item, the premium massively increases. So you're finding refineries are hunting all over the shop for where the happy medium is on that. So some things we're actually making a little bit more on, and by a little bit I mean a little bit, and some things we're making less on, because the prices have compressed, or the premiums have compressed a bit. So it's an interesting time, and I expect this elasticity to last for at least another 6 months. And it's very frustrating as a bullion dealer to try and get that happy medium where you're still making a profit, but you're not, price gouging the customer, which is something we're incredibly conscious of. Is there a good place to buy replicas as decoys? Honestly, Alibaba and places like that out of China, where they're made legally, they are made incredibly well. They're cheap enough to buy and to import. I don't like people doing it. But before everyone jumps on me, there are legitimate reasons why people do them. Having them as fakes is one reason. People in the 19, I know it's not a precious metal coin, but the 1930 penny is the other classic example, where people have they've collected all the pennies that throughout the years, but obviously a 1930 penny, you're paying $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 for it, depending on its condition. So, obviously not everyone can drop that, but they don't want the hole in their collection. So they buy a $2 one out of China, and they put it in there. So now the big display on the wall looks complete. So there are legitimate reasons for buying it. It's when people buy them with the intent of selling them as the real thing that I get very cranky about. They certainly do sell them cheap. Where are we up to here? Hello from the US. G'day from the US. There's a number of people from the US on here. Bullion Now, your video inspired me to buy both the 1 ounce and 2 ounce. I can never pronounce that, but the Thor's hammer rounds. They were Christmas presents to my stack. A fantastic coin. Little pricier than normal bullion coins, but absolutely worth it. And we're seeing them sell for far more on the secondary market already. Why is your pre-order silver kangaroos $2 cheaper than Perth Mint? No comment. They shouldn't be $2 cheaper than Perth Mint, and if they are, I need to be reviewing them. Otherwise, I'm obviously selling. We only make, I'm not even sure we make $2 out of them. So if we're $2 in Perth Mint, there's a possibility that we've slipped up and we're actually selling them below wholesale. So I will be checking that once I get off live stream. Never liked silver as much as gold, but I'm glad I was disciplined in stacking it alongside gold over the years. Look, investments aren't always about what you like as much as about what's good for you. It's a little like medicine, I suppose. There are times when I buy things because they're a good buy and they're good for me financially rather than they're a good thing that I want to stack. I've got some of the ugliest bars and coins and things in existence in my stack. And actually, I can't say that because I actually love the really ugly ones, but I've got some really normal ones that don't do anything for me, and I really don't particularly care if I keep them or not, but they fill that void. They're part of the stack, and I know that they're a good investment probably for my kids and my grandkids rather than myself, but they're part of the stack and an important part of it. So don't just buy the things you love. Branch out into those other things because you will be glad when you come to sell things that you got things that, I don't care about that. Let's get rid of it. Payslips would be excessive. Well, you're in for a shock soon, mate. I can tell you. Where are we? I'm sorry, my screen just skipped. What 1 kilo silver coins can you say you're getting in the future? So we'll get the kilo kookaburra, the kilo koala. We're looking at the kilo coins out of the Royal Canadian Mint. There's some out of the Royal Mint. Bloody if I can remember what they are. There's one out of Germania. Ask me after I've been to Berlin at the end of January. I'll have more idea of what's coming through from the overseas markets at that point. The talker man, Michael, just wanted to personally thank you and your team for being hands down the best bullion deal in Australia. Thank you very much. You broke the seal on a once seemingly secret industry. Thank you. You are incredibly welcome. And that's certainly been our goal, is to lift the curtain on a lot of these practices in the bullion industry and to get the education out there. So I'm glad it's being recognised, and I'm glad it's working. It's good to see. Look, it frustrates me that we haven't done much of the education of late. We've been a little bit too hectic, but it's good to see that other people have picked up the ball and are running with it. And we're seeing more. You're always going to get those dramatic, headline grabbers that, gold's going to $15,000 an ounce in the next 24 hours and, all this sort of stuff, and the reasons why, that more dramatic stuff. But it's also good to see that some of that grassroots stuff is starting to get out there where there's genuine conversations being had and genuine discussions and genuine opinions being both debated and either proven or disproven or backed up and things like that. So the real education can actually get out there instead of the puff and puffery that tends to happen. So it's great to see that other people are being able to pick up the ball and run with that. And we're seeing some really good stuff coming out. I don't want to particularly call anyone out, and I'm sure lots of people in here will be able to, but there's many that are branching out outside of the US as well, which is good to see, because you go back 5 years, the only information you could get was very US centric. But we're seeing it come out of Europe now, out of Australia now. I even noticed one out of New Zealand recently. And it's really good to see that those honest conversations are being had more and more. Are you seeing an increase in SMSF account registrations and purchasing? Absolutely, we are. People are more and more taking hold of their financial futures. both on a superannuation front, but also on a general investment stacking front. And age and sex are becoming far less relevant, which is just fantastic to see. I was tired of being the youngest person in a room full of particularly males. It was very rare, even 5 years ago, that you saw a male walk into the store. And now, correction, that you saw anything other than a male walk into the store. Let me get that round the right way. Whereas now it's very, very even there. There's young and old and everything in between. And it's great to see that everyone is starting to take the accountability for their own financial future. And I think we're only going to see more of it, the more of the mainstream super funds and banks and that even in Australia, we saw a couple of super funds collapse this year and take serious dollars down with them. And I will guarantee you that people in the chat here have been impacted by it. It's great to see people going, actually, it's my responsibility. And it doesn't mean that I can't use these superannuation funds as well, but there's a component of it that I'm going to take back under control for myself so I can secure my own future. And I love it. It's great. I spent a Christmas in Austria years ago and considered studying there just so I had an excuse to spend 3 years there. It's an amazing country. It really is. And I love every minute here. The dealer I purchased from is now offering $5 back of spot price here in the States. I don't know if that's $5 above or $5 below. It's now offering $5 back of spot price. I think you're saying it's $5 above, which would be great if it is, because I know Backyard Bear, the US has had problems with silver buybacks for many months, particularly the junk silver over there not being taken at all. So if they're starting to pay above spot, that's great to see. I'll almost guarantee it's for coins only, but it'd be great if we could get a bit more information on that. Sydney store, ask me next year. Is there an amount of gold or silver one can hold with or without receipt? I heard e-waste had hard SWAT team questions, even though assayed. I'm not sure of your question there, Peter. Is there an amount of gold or silver one can hold with or without receipt? You don't have to have. There's no legal requirement to have a receipt. You may be asked to prove that you own it, I suppose, if you're in a dodgy situation. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you're selling back to Bullion Now, we'd certainly take your ID and those types of things for all sellbacks. We've always taken ID for all sellbacks. We test the product, make sure it's correct weight, all that sort of stuff. But I don't think I've ever asked for that's not true. Asked for a receipt one day for a bar that had been purchased back in the 70s, and it wasn't because I wanted them to prove they'd bought it. I just wanted the paper receipt to show that this bar had been purchased for a very small amount. It was a professional curiosity. It wasn't anything else. But other than that, I don't know of anyone in the industry that actually asks for receipts of purchase. No, that's not Matt behind me. Really wish Pam would do an annual 1 kilo silver kangaroo. They do a gold one. Yeah, they don't do a silver one in the kilo. Have Perth Mint stopped silver wombats, super pits? I think it's open knowledge now. We didn't want to announce it prior to the Perth Mint, but they've certainly stopped the wombat, the super pit, the quokka, the mother and baby, or it was called Next Generation as well, depending on where you were. That's all that's coming off the top of my head. I don't know about any of the others. But yeah, they've stopped a number of them. When placing an online order and selecting pay in store, how long do you have to collect and pay? This one's causing some controversy in the back end at the moment amongst the staff. Payment is due immediately. We recognise that banks don't transfer funds immediately, so we allow that 48-hour grace period for the funds to hit the bank account. Pay in stores we like to see within a day or two. And you'll actually find we start cancelling orders and looking at applying market loss policy for anything that's over a couple of days old, because it costs us to hold them open. It also costs us, if we sell a product here and spot price drops, and then you renege on your order, and let's face it, it is a legally binding agreement between the two of us. Spot price drops, you cancel your order, we now have to resell it at this lower price, so we make that loss. And obviously, as a business, you start making a loss, you go out of business relatively quickly. On the flip side of the transaction, before everyone gets up me for that's unfair, on the flip side of the transaction, if you purchase it here and spot price rises to there, you don't expect us to say, well, you didn't come in for a couple of days to pay for it, so now you've got to pay this price. You expect us to honour the price that we locked it in as. So the expectation is both sides of the argument, or both sides of the transaction, I should have said there. So, as you expect us to fulfil our requirements, we expect you to fulfil the requirements within that 48-hour grace period. And like I said, the payment is actually due immediately and should be paid immediately, but we do allow that 48 hours for the funds to actually work their way through the system, or for you to come into the store and pay for it. And you're going to find our new system next year automates that a heck of a lot more. So you're going to find that the order is cancelled instantaneously, pretty much at the 48-hour mark. If we haven't received the funds, if the funds then arrive after that, they will be credited to your account for you to reuse. But that transaction will be done and dusted, and you won't be able to renew it. And if the market loss policy is enacted, we don't usually enact it the first time round. We usually give people a, hey, look, this is the rules sort of thing, and please honour them going forward. But usually the first time around, we let it slide, unless you've got I have had a couple of customers recently that have placed like 15 orders in a short period of time, and then selectively said, I will take this one at the lowest price and I'm going to ignore the rest of them. No. It doesn't work that way. It absolutely does not work that way. Every transaction is to be honoured on both sides of the transaction within that 48 hours. All right, enough on that. My page has skipped and I'm completely lost as to where I was. I apologise for that. Does Australia have a coin fair or bullion meetup like the big German or US one? It's not fair to say no, we don't, because we have the ANDA fairs that go around the whole of Australia. And there are some bullion meetups that are organised privately around Australia. But we certainly do have nothing like the World Money Fair in Berlin. Like no one, even the Americans, don't have anything that's as big as that. It is humongous. So, yeah, you can't compare ANDA to pretty much anything in the US either. It's a much smaller market in Australia. But they're still there, and there's still great things to go to. I certainly wasn't meaning to denigrate them. They're not the size of what you see overseas. Given the popularity of Yankee tin coin, would you consider a BN round? Ask me in the new year. Are there any gaps in the market you would like to see filled? E.g., yes, no flipping coins. Instead of ounce coins, smaller sizes for better prices. I would absolutely love to see the fractionals come in cheaper. And look, if that was an unfair statement, we are actually seeing the fractionals come in at cheaper prices now that the price has gone up. The spot price has gone up. We're actually seeing more of the fractionals being sought after. So the volume of scale can actually start bringing that price down. And we are seeing those fractionals become cheaper. Not humongously cheaper, but it's certainly good to see those fractionals become cheaper. And that is definitely an area of the market I would like to see. I would also like to see some coins come into the market. And we are seeing it, which is refreshing, but there is still an attitude amongst some of the older members or the manufacturers or wholesalers in this industry of we can produce any crap and charge any price we like and the market will swallow it. If any manufacturers are listening to this, particularly the manufacturers, if you produce a well-produced product, and I'm not talking about purity here, although obviously it has to be 4 nines, but if you can produce a well-presented product, good design, well thought through, pitch it at a reasonable price into the market, you will be run over with the demand and you will not be able to keep up with it. But if you continue to produce crap designs on crap presentations at ridiculous prices, you're going to get stuck with it, and you can't expect us to buy. I had this one puts my blood pressure up a little bit, because yet again I had this discussion. In fact, I've had it a couple of times just lately with both domestic local producers and some internationals of, that is rubbish. You cannot expect us to take this product. We know we take a vast majority of your product, and we may even have exclusives with you, but we cannot take that crap at that price, because the market will just walk away from it. They'll laugh at us for trying to palm that off to them. So pull up your socks and do it properly, or don't do it at all. So yeah, you're touching on a sore point for me there, but that's something I'm glad we're starting to see, that the market recognise that. But we just need to drag some dinosaurs into the modern age over that one, and that's what I'd like to see. Alrighty, Mike, I'm not sure what that's relating to, but I'm glad somebody's answered your question there. When is the Black Friday spot sale? Ask me next year. We just couldn't have the capacity to do it this year. Any idea of the Bullion Now Australian Tour 2026? The planning for that has actually started. So there you go. Stand by for further information. My page just skipped again. I don't know why it's doing it this quickly. Normally it takes longer. Are all bullion sales reported to some government body, e.g. ATO? Not all bullion sales are reported. No, as far as Bullion Now goes, no bullion sales are reported to the ATO or Centrelink or anything along those sort of lines. Let's get the reporting requirements straight right from the start. We are required to report certain transactions to AUSTRAC. And I'm not speaking out of school here. These are listed on government websites. So any transaction that is over $10,000 in cash, we are required to lodge with AUSTRAC. For all those that say, that's all right, I'll do a bank transfer, I will guarantee you that the bank will also lodge that transaction if it's done in cash. Correction, if it's done by bank transfer and it's done over $10,000, that they will lodge it with AUSTRAC. So that's a standard requirement pretty much around the world. You'll find that any transaction over about that $10,000-ish mark will have to be reported to some government body wherever you are. That is our reporting requirement from that perspective. Recently arranged combined shipping with BN. The whole experience was easy. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you for providing such a fantastic service at extremely reasonable price. You are incredibly welcome. And I do know, before someone jumps on me and says, "Oh, but I had a terrible transaction recently," we've tidied a lot of it up. We're up to date with the emails again, which is fantastic to see. That was a huge stress. We've caught up on a lot of the backlog. So I know there's some ripples in the force as some disturbances have occurred over the last few months. But I'm hoping we've ironed out those disturbances, and we're going to enter the new year a heck of a lot happier. And we're going to be able to provide that, get back to that excellent customer service that we've always tried to provide. Okay. Let's keep records of where you obtained your medals. Look, I can only go on. I'm referring to Peter's comment about records again. I can only go by what experiences we have at BN. I can't vouch for any other bullion dealer around the country. We don't require you to produce a receipt as such. Look, I guess I can't speak for the police, because I'm not a police officer. I don't work for the police or anything along those sort of lines. They may come to you and say, you need to prove that you obtained any item, not just bullion, that you obtained this item legitimately. And obviously the easy way to do that is through handing over a receipt. The question would be more along the lines of, we're suspicious as to where you've sourced this from, rather than you don't have a receipt. So you just need to be able to prove, in the circumstance you're describing, I would assume, that you just need to be able to give an indication of where you sourced this from. Look, larger amounts, you should be able to say, well, look, I sourced it from this bullion dealer. Most regular buyers of bullion, even if you were buying, so if you come into store and you buy below $5,000, the invoice doesn't have your name on it or anything like that. It just says cash in store. But most people that buy product from us, on larger, like buy regularly over time, one of us would recognise them and be able to vouch for them. Look, I'm not saying it's not a smart thing to keep receipts, but I don't think it's essential. They would have to prove. No one could take it off you unless they proved the onus. From my understanding, again, I'm not a lawyer. My understanding is it's not up to you to prove that you have obtained it legally. It's up to them to prove that you have not obtained it legally. So that would be my argument. But save yourself the argument and keep the receipt. Shame I missed the victory lap for silver and platinum. Yeah. Was there an update on the Coke bars? Not at this stage. We don't have an update other than it will be next year at this stage. Thanks, Michael, for the comment on platinum. Gave me the confidence to acquire a nice stack before the jump. I'm glad that worked for you, Backyard Bear. It's always good when it works out. But obviously, as I say to everyone, this is my opinion only. You need to go back and do your own research, which obviously you have, Backyard Bear, and it's great that it's worked out. Michael has not modelled for a round, nor will Michael model for a round. I did see that unicorn one getting around, and it did make me laugh. And of anyone, if I was ever going to produce one, that one would be right up near the top of the list. But as I said earlier, you never say never, but this one's as close as I'm ever going to say to you. That will never happen. Are there any similarities with the rhodium price spike and silver, or are they completely different scenarios? Same, but different. There's a huge interest in all the precious metals. I would argue the rhodium price spike is more related to the platinum palladium price spike than the silver one, because it's one of the three inert metals that are fairly interchangeable with each other. But rhodium also sets its own pace as well. So it's a little bit of the same, but it's also totally different on that front. Do we have a weekly, fortnightly payment plan? We don't at the moment as such, but we certainly do have people that use unallocated for that very reason, and they will buy X amount of grams or ounces per week or per fortnight out of their pay packet and stack it up on the unallocated. And some of them leave it there entirely, and some will, buy a gram at a time until they build up to an ounce, or an ounce at a time until they build up to a kilo, and that way they can buy a lower premium priced product, because the bigger you go, the lower the premium becomes. They can buy a lower premium priced product once they get to that ounce or kilo, whatever their magic number is. They buy it out, take it away, and then they start it all over again and buy a gram again every week or every fortnight as they go along. But hopefully next year sometime they will actually, they being the IT crowd, will actually be able to get it onto our website where we can just do that, $10 a week or, $50 a month or, whatever it is that you want, you'll be able to plug that in. I'm glad you agree with me, Delita. I'm not sure what it's about, but I'm glad you agree with me. Scott, use the unallocated system scheme. It works well. Yeah, I think Peter's just backing up what I just said. I'd sliced up a 1,000-ounce bar. Is that something you might sell through your shop? No. I can't actually say no to that. The problem with slices of a 1,000-ounce bar is the fact that you've now made it so it's scrap metal. It's no longer considered bullion unless it has been re-stamped correctly, and you'd have to meet all the GST requirements for that. So we don't tend to buy back that sort of stuff unless we're buying it back as scrap, and we're not scrap dealers. So no, it's not something that we do play around with. Due to travelling overseas, I sometimes struggle to make payment quickly and efficiently. Is it possible to make payment into the BN account for future purposes? Yes, it absolutely is. And we have several customers that do deposit a chunk of money, and then they'll, days, weeks, and occasionally months. That one drives me a little bit nuts. But no, it doesn't. It just sits in the books. It doesn't really matter. We have people that will prepay for an order and then say, in the next 2 weeks or so, or the next 3 weeks, when the price hits X, I'm going to place an order. Can you just sit on the money for me for that time, and I'll place the order when I'm good and ready? Absolutely, we can do that. Has Michael gone from skiing in Australia to skiing in the Northern Hemisphere? Snow Bunny RAM required for BN. It wasn't. The short answer is yes. That's actually what we did, but it wasn't intentional. No, it was intentional. We needed a break. It tied in well. I have a family of mad not skiers, mad snowboarders. So the vote was passed around, and they all decided that we should go and do a white Christmas, which then had to be wound back slightly. And we came into Austria because, believe it or not, Meerhoven has the longest snow season of anywhere in the world. So we thought if we were going to get a white Christmas, it would be there. So that's the whole reason we came across here. So yeah, it's been a great time. I see 2 different brands of tails on your website now. Will you continue to stock both? No. Michael, the BN experience as a buyer or seller is awesome. Oh, thank you. Nothing to be ashamed of. Thank you very much for that, Duncan Rose. I appreciate it because we don't get it right every time. And I'll be the first to admit that. I think we need to start wrapping this up. We've certainly hit the 1.5 hour mark. Hey, Michael, confused between platinum physical versus unallocated, which is better for short and long term? Look, I'm going to jump in front of everyone else here and say it's always better, always better to go physical because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. But there are certain advantages to unallocated. You don't pay premium, and premium in platinum is much higher because it's a difficult metal to work with. So you get more bang for your buck in that unallocated realm. You don't have to worry about storage because that's our problem. It is backed physically because we back our unallocated program physically. So it does have its pluses there, but ultimately, believe it or not, even though we offer an unallocated program, I am a big advocate of if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Even down to the fact that you can't access your unallocated outside of our business hours. Like if you need to sell it, we had this comment come up right back at the start of the discussion. Somebody said, if I need to sell my unallocated over the Christmas break, effectively, how do I do it? And my answer was, well, we're not around, you can't do it. You're tied to those things where if you have got it in your hot little hand, you can look at it at 2:00 in the morning and give yourself reassurance. You can take it and say, well, Bullion Now is closed today, but I know that XYZ, please nobody ever open XYZ Bullion because it's bad enough that I can't use the first 3 letters of the alphabet without getting myself into trouble. XYZ Bullion dealer is open. I can actually take my bullion around there, or I'm moving to Queensland tomorrow. I need to take it with me. I can't wait for BN to open because, I've got to get there for whatever reason. I'll take it with me sort of thing. I've got it stored at home. And the other example is, and I'd hate dragging people back into the COVID era, but, a lot of pretty much every bullion dealer except us shut down over COVID. And certainly all the storage places shut down over COVID. So we had a lot of customers that had got their bullion stored in different storage facilities around Melbourne that could not access it during that COVID period. And, you need access to these things when the world goes to hell in a handbasket. No comment to their previous commenter or no dig at them. When it goes pear-shaped, you need access to it. And this is the classic time where it didn't. It wasn't available. So you've got to understand that they're the limitations of the unallocated. It is always better as a bullion dealer, I'm telling you, and as a stacker, I'm telling you, it's always better to have it in physical where you control it. It's just not always practical. We certainly do have half-ounce lunar gold coins coming in. I'd want to see the restamping before I committed to that. Do you get taxed if yourselves need to talk to the tax department or your accountant about that? Different people have different opinions on that one, Robin. Buying PMs in the US is expensive, risky, and difficult. Got to fix this. I can't comment on that one.
In a few minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm being given the wind up here as well as on there. So we are going to have to draw it to a close there. So again, thank you very much for tuning in and putting up with my ramblings all by myself. Sometimes that can get a bit monotonous, and I get that. Thank you for everyone who participated. These would be just dead if it wasn't for people that participate, both now live and even after the event. We get a lot of comments from people that watch it, tonight or tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or all those types of things. And it's fantastic, and I love that interaction. So thank you very much. Thank you for everyone supporting and being an incredibly valued member of the Bullion Now family. I've said several times I was very uncomfortable when Joe came up and coined that term of the Bullion Now family, because we are a business at the end of the day. But more and more I realised that I was wrong and he was right. It absolutely has become a family, and I cannot thank you enough for that. It's an incredible thing to be a part of. It really is. We are obviously going into the festive season. So I wish you and yours the very best for Christmas or for the holiday season, whichever way you want to see it. It's an incredible special time for certainly my family, and I hope for yours, where we all come together and we have a great time. And we spend time together, and it's a lot of fun. So I hope the very best for Christmas for you and your family. And I hope for and pray for safe travels for you as you move around. It becomes a very interesting time of year for movements, moving around the country and around the world. So please stay safe as you do that. We will be back next year. The team gets back on the 5th, and the store opens again on the 6th. There are a few of us that will be working over the period, but please do not turn up at the store or expect to have the phones answered or emails answered. We may be able to answer the occasional email here and there. I will be keeping half an eye on it. But as a rule, you need to consider us closed for the 2 weeks from our last day is the 23rd of December, and the store and everything starts up again on the 6th of January. So have a great time during that period. And a big thank you to the staff at Bullion Now, both for their the work they do every day, but the big smile that they keep on their face, no matter how much I'm throwing at them at any one time. It's an incredible team that we have servicing the Bullion Now family, and they are incredible, and I say that about each and every one of them, and I am incredibly grateful for them. People complain about employees, and I am incredibly blessed with the employees that we have. We're going to draw a line under it there. Thank you very much. We will see you in the new year. Have fun.